said something about 2 wounds. Is that correct?
Yes.
And how did you see the 2 wounds through the shirt?
Just was an observation that I made when I saw him laying on the ground.
So did you see 2 holes in the shirt?
I'm not sure exactly what I saw when I was there, but I could see that there were 2 apparent gunshot wounds to his chest.
And then I'm sure, well, I won't speak for you. So when they began CPR, they did open his shirt. Is that correct?
I have no idea.
Because when you walked by, his shirt was open.
Objection 2. Question.
Yeah, please ask questions only.
Did you,
So that's kind of a statement, but lawyers do that sometimes, or they say a statement as a question. That wasn't necessarily her testifying, but we're getting close. Let's make sure we nip it in the bud. More coming.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say there were discussions, probably just in passing.
okay. So how many times have you emailed with Detective Duncan concerning this case?
Objection relevance.
Overruled, you can answer if you know.
I have no idea.
What about text messages?
I mean, anytime cops are talking about a case, I would argue it's relevant, especially if they're getting their story straight, especially if it was self-defense and they talked about it a ton and did a very thorough investigation and determined that it was self-defense for 2 years. That type of stuff I think is really important. Stop when you're ahead. Don't ask the next question or the extra question or the question that's going to take you off a cliff. And she absolutely steps in it. Now, common sense would tell you those are not smart questions because they didn't do what Alex Cox just admittedly did in this self-defense case where he still has to admit that he did pull that trigger and commit that act. He just says it's not criminal. None of these people that are calm there did that. But she kind of got her point across, at least if she wants to make it, and the state can do whatever they want. But she goes too far into it and really ends up stepping into it.
So when I arrived at the scene, things were pretty calm.
Is that a question?
Yes.
Oh, yes, you were calm.
No, I'm saying when I arrived at the scene itself was calm environment.
It was.
Okay. So if I would have been hysterical, that would have been more out of character than if I was calm when everybody else was being calm. Isn't that correct?
Speculation.
First off, it's not really speculation. The judge sustains it, but it's not. She's asking a question. If everybody's calm and one person's freaking out, that would be weirder, right? Well, only one person committed a heinous act here, whether it was justified or not. Horrible, sad, something that should freak you out. Only one person did that. I wouldn't have even objected. I would have let this officer keep answering. He didn't really go into as much detail, but at any point he could have said, I didn't do anything to my brother-in-law like Alex Cox did. Nothing happened to my husband like it happened to you. So no, it was not normal how you guys were acting. It was weird. It was strange. It was.
That's another thing that you said, calm and nonchalant. Is that correct? You
Yes.
stated that Alex was nonchalant. What is your definition of nonchalant?
Kind of like how I am now. I don't have a lot of emotion. I'm not afraid. Just nonchalant.
Is that your typical demeanor?
I guess it depends on the situation and the circumstance.
I mean, this can be a stressful situation, right? So it's your demeanor right now.
It is.
Testifying in court can be a stressful.
Again, I think she feels like she's doing better with this than she is. She really wants to go into the nonchalant, and it's a situation where these witnesses could have really steamrolled her from it, and I was waiting for it to happen, and it didn't until redirect.
So if that was Alex's normal demeanor, then it wouldn't be out of the ordinary for him to be nonchalant.
Objection. Speculation.
I'll allow it.
It's not speculation. She said, your natural demeanor is like this, and this is how you're acting, even though it's stressful in court. So if Alex's natural demeanor is that, it would be normal for him to act like that. The judge allows it. This witness should have said, no. If this happened to me, somebody who is normally nonchalant, I would be freaking out if I just had to do this to my brother-in-law in front of my niece and sister. I would be freaking out. I was waiting for one of them to bury her as she just continued to go with this line of questioning. She made her point. Maybe it wasn't so weird that he was nonchalant is the point she was trying to make. She made it. She should have moved on.
Allow that answer. He doesn't know the demeanor, but you can answer.
Can you ask the question again?
Yeah, so if Alex's normal demeanor was like your normal demeanor, and even in a stressful situation, if he was nonchalant, it wouldn't be out of the ordinary for him to be nonchalant again, because that's his normal demeanor. Correct?
To compound question.
I'll sustain that objection.
You mentioned that I had parked across the street. Is that correct?
Yes.
Why did I have to park across the street?
I don't know.
So we saw on the body cam, right, that there was a huge fire truck, correct?
Yes.
There was police cars, correct?
Yes.
There was a CSI van, correct?
She was parked somewhere. I don't know where.
Next to the house, kind of, I guess, south of the house. So there was nowhere to park except for across the street. Is that correct?
No,
That's not correct?
that is not correct.
Where else could I have parked?
Well, the street's long. You could have parked anywhere along the street. You could have parked on the other street. That's where I parked. Or you could park on the other side of the street, south of the home, where there was plenty of parking. So there was other options to park.
But I parked as close as I could to the scene so that I could come talk to you. Is that correct?
Speculation, testifying.
Sustained.
So now she's testifying to what she did, why she did it, what she saw there. Not incredibly important to this case, but still a good objection by the prosecutor because you don't want her to get into the habit of doing that, of determining what she is going to say, what she's not going to say, what she's going to connect and not connect.
So we can agree that there were lots of police vehicles blocking the house. Is that correct?
Emergency vehicles.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes, emergency, police, fire, CSI, all were there, correct?
Yes.
Okay. But even though all of those things were there, the scene was not chaotic. Is that correct?
Correct.
It was a very calm scene that day.
Objection asked and answered.
Sustained.
Do you know how hot it was that day?
No, but it was hot.
It was hot.
The confirmation giggle, it was hot, is little. It's just something very small, right? But to me, you're not a lawyer. This isn't your job. You're not building rapport with the jury. This is your life. Your husband's life affected your kids. Just the giggle is to me something you should not take any part in that in this case. I don't really care what's happening, right? That's just my opinion. Also something I wanted to bring up. But
When there's an objection.
I'm sorry.
Wait for the ruling.
Did you have a conversation with Alex on the way to the police station?
Yes.
Objection asked and answered.
And did he express?
Hold on. When
Sorry.
there's an objection.
I'm sorry.
Wait for the ruling. I'll sustain the objection, but the answer will stand nonetheless. Go ahead. Next question.
Did he express to you that he kind of felt out of it because he hit?
Hearsay.
Sustained.
now we start to get into her trying to get hearsay into evidence by reading his report. By the way, throughout this entire cross-examination, she's saying, in your report, you say X. In your report, you say Y. That's actually inappropriate. It's kind of like improper impeachment. You can't really bring up the report to refresh. You can't enter the report because it's full of hearsay. You can't bring up the report to have him refresh his recollection unless he disagrees with what's in his report. So you should ask the question, you did this, you did this, you did that, you did that. By saying you said this in your report, you're improperly bolstering your question so that if he disagrees, the jury can think it comes from his report, even if you misread it. So it's just not the way that it's supposed to happen. And so what she's doing here, she's asking him questions and talking about hearsay that's specifically in his report, which is specifically why the report can't come into evidence. And eventually, when she loses some objections here, she gets frustrated and she says, I'm just reading from his report, which is exactly what you can't do because the jury now might think, this is so unfair. Why won't they let her read from his report? Juries usually think police reports are admissible and that they're perfectly fine to come into evidence. So it's like, that's not fair. Why aren't they letting Lori Vallow read these questions from his report?
When did you make your report about the incident on July 11th, 2019?
I think what was the end of my workday that day, but I stopped and started it numerous times throughout the day.
So did you finish it that day or it still took a few days?
No, I finished at the end of my shift,
By the end of your shift, which was what time that day?
4 o'clock.
Okay. And did you make any revisions to that later on, report that you made in regards?
And she's even using some of this to bolster, like you wrote this report, when you wrote it, things like that. Because again, she doesn't know. So it seems like it might be the right thing to do, but it's not.
What?
Well, I had no way to test it, so I have to articulate it that way.
And then got into the car. Did someone ride with you to the police station from the residence? Just you and Alex were in the car?
Yes,
No other officers?
correct.
But before you got into the car, an officer came over and took his phone, put it in an evidence bag?
You're asking me for recollection. I don't remember that. It's probable because we usually try to bring their property to the area where we're going to. So it's probable.
I just didn't see it in your report, but I saw it on the body cam, so I wondered if you knew. Okay.
Can I object to the defendant testifying?
All right. Please only ask questions.
That was an eye roll for me. Personally, if I was the prosecutor, I would not object there. She's like, I was just confused because you said this or that or whatever she said, right? She wasn't saying, I did this. You weren't there. You didn't see it. I was there. I was saying that's testifying. Lori Vallow was kind of testifying like a lawyer testifies, having a conversation with the witness or saying, I thought I remember you say this or whatever. I would not have done. And I'm trying to give examples of really good objections and where you need to keep it tight, and other ones that I probably wouldn't do with a pro se defendant. With a criminal defense attorney, totally fine.
Sure.
when you make statements about what you saw or heard, that's testimony.
I apologize, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
So Detective Moffett took over for you and you departed.
Yes,
Okay, thank you. You said when you spoke to Alex that he was cooperative. Is that correct?
yes,
Is it possible he could have been in shock?
Objection, speculation.
Sustained.
You know, I don't think that's that bad of a question. And I think if I was the judge or if I was the lawyer, I would have said, Judge, can I lay a little foundation? You've interviewed people out of after traumatic events a lot, right? Sometimes they're in shock, sometimes they're not, right? And okay, fine, you're not an expert on what shock is, but sometimes they're more talkative than others. Are there reasons for that? Do people respond differently to traumatic events? Have you ever had somebody respond in a way where they're not talkative after an event like this, or they are calm, or whatever it may be? Have they presented with shock type symptoms? I think you can get into that if a cop really hasn't interviewed a ton of people after something like this. Now, if you don't know how he's going to answer and he says, actually, no, I have never seen somebody that's as cold and calm as Alex Cox after he did this, well, then you're stuck with that answer and you're screwed. But I kind of think she should have been able to go into this a little bit more.
From your observation, how long did the cut on Alex's head bleed? I mean, you were with him for about 40 minutes, and how long
Terrible question.
do you think it was bleeding?
well, I couldn't answer that because I wasn't standing in the back of his head when I first made contact with him. So to be honest with you, I don't know when it started. So I don't have the minutes.
Did it appear to be bleeding when he exited the house, or no?
I didn't look at the back of his head right away when he exited the house.
When was the first time that you looked at it? About how long after he exited?
I can't answer time-wise.
Did you ever enter into the house?
No,
You were just there in the front yard
yes,
the whole time? Okay. Detectives in the front yard
I'm going to sustain the objection.
and gave them your synopsis of what had happened. You said they got into a domestic fight consisted,
Objection.
I'm sorry,
I'm going to sustain the objection.
what was the legal objection?
Hearsay.
Hearsay.
Oh, I was just reading his report. Okay.
Then objection, no question.
Please ask your next question.
All right. So she wanted to get into a domestic issue, which is what she said in her opening. There was a domestic issue between Charles and Tylee, and she wanted to get out that had been relayed to this cop, and this cop related to other cops. That's clearly hearsay, but that would have been a very good point and big point for Lori Vallow. So a really good objection, timely objection. Then Lori Vallow follows it up with, I'm just reading his report, Judge, again, to make it seem like they're hiding something from the jury. They don't want the jury to know the real story. So that was an effective spot to go, but you got to know you can't do it that way. You just would never be able to do it that way.